Well, it can sometimes feel like every time we open our phone or switch on the news, it's another crisis, another disaster, another problem somewhere in the world. It's not just the media as well. Experts say our brains are actually wired to pay more attention to the negative. It's known as negativity bias. It comes from part of the brain which is constantly scanning for threats. But in a world of constant notifications, like all the time, and a 24-hour news cycle, that wiring can leave us feeling somewhat overwhelmed. So, why are we drawn to bad news and what can we do to stop it from affecting our mental health? Our regular expert psychologist, Dr. Rachel Hannam, joins us now. Welcome back to the show, Rachel.
Oh, thank you, Karla.
All right, let's start with the science. Why does our brain give so much more weight to negative emotions and bad news than positive ones?
Yeah, it's a great topic, why our brains seem to love bad news. It has a lot to do with our evolution and survival. For most of human history, paying attention to alarming events or to danger was critical for our survival. Early humans who quickly noticed threats like hostile groups and predators or, unsafe food were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. Missing a positive opportunity like extra food might be, disappointing, but, and losing a benefit, but missing a threat could be fatal. So our brains have evolved to really prioritize negative information and it stays in our memory for longer.
I love the idea that our caveman ancestors, perceived threats and looked on the negative as like a survival superpower.
Absolutely. I mean, a rustle in the bushes could have meant nothing, but it could have meant a deadly snake. A blip on the horizon could have meant nothing, but it could have meant, a woolly mammoth coming
Yeah.
towards you. So our ancestors who got the heck out of there when they thought there might have been some sort of threat would have
Mm.
survived and passed on this negativity bias.
But it's funny, obviously, now we're not running from, woolly mammoths and snakes, or maybe we are actually, but we're not really running from predators on a daily basis, I guess, anymore. How is this ancient sort of threat detection system actually hurting our mental health in the modern world? And then compound that, I guess, with 24/7 news cycles and smartphones and notifications and this constant
Yes.
dinging.
Absolutely. Well, our ancient ancestors would have, experienced shock, fear, anger, and dealt with it and got the heck out of there or, had the fight. And then they would have been able to retreat, provided they survived into a safe place and calm their nervous system down. They would have had a strong memory of that event because emotions like fear, shock, and anger release stress hormones, which really strengthens our memory formation. But these days, we're still triggering that ancient neurocircuitry, like you said, with
Mm.
negative or shocking events. And we're not really getting the rest and recovery time in that ancient neurocircuitry
Mm.
to reset our nervous system, metabolize all of that cortisol and adrenaline that can literally get pumped out in our brains and bodies just from reading too much news. And news organizations and social media platforms seem to know that negative stories will attract more attention. These stories get more clicks, more shares, and more engagement. And then we're in a feedback loop where we're reinforcing that natural tendency to focus on negative stories.
It seems like a very toxic cycle that we're in, where we, actively seek out bad news, I guess, to prove is it our own negative thoughts, right? How do you know that we're doing this? Is it a conscious thing, or is it really that subconscious?
Well, it can be quite subconscious because, it's hardwired into us for
Mm,
survival.
mm,
But once, I often say as a psychologist, language helps us make the unconscious conscious. So once we're aware and conscious of this bias,
mm,
we can do something about it. I personally stay away from most news because I know bad things happen in the world.
mm.
Sometimes I need to know, but mostly I don't need to know. I can't help those people, suffering overseas. I mean, sometimes I can donate or do something, but
Yeah.
I'm very mindful how I curate my news feed. And so once we're aware, we can limit how much we expose ourselves to. And we're all different. Some of us are more sensitive, so we need to
Mm.
be aware of what we can handle and tolerate. But also, I think we can be becoming aware of this bias. We can remind ourselves the world is maybe not as negative as it appears in the media, and lots of good things happen. People love and help each other all the time, every minute of every day, everywhere in the world. But that doesn't make the news. So we need to find that balance between the good and the beauty in the world and the bad stuff.
I love that idea. And I think that we try and do that as best as we can here on afternoons
Yes.
because it just seems to be we are inundated. But sometimes that, you know, whether you seek out the bad news or not, it does feel like, when you get an ulcer and you always poke it with it. For some reason, I always poke an ulcer with my tongue. Like it feels bad and it hurts, but I don't know why. I don't know what to stop me from doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We become kind of tender. I like that analogy of the ulcer, also of a bruise. You know, when you have a bruise on your arm or leg
You
and you
press it.
touch it,
Yeah.
it hurts. If you touch with the same pressure on another part of your body, it wouldn't hurt. So we can become quite bruised and tender psychologically around certain issues. You know,
Mm.
we all have our sort of core sensitivities, as we call it in psychology,
Yeah.
sometimes from childhood, sometimes from events in adulthood. And we need to be very gentle with those bruises in
Yeah.
our psyche and not keep, it's very tempting to want to keep investigating them like tongue with the ulcer.
Yeah.
But if we become conscious, we can try to let those things heal in our psyches. And I think it's a good and important thing to do because cortisol
Yeah.
definitely takes its toll on the tissues of our body over the long term.
My guest right now is Dr. Rachel Hannam, a clinical psychologist. We're talking about why our brains love bad news. Just we've sort of touched on the sort of mental uh, health well-being and what sort of delving into the negative news and being in that sort of toxic cycle of news does. I really, you just touched on it there about your cortisol. Let's talk about the physical because when you have raised cortisol, it makes weight loss difficult. It makes sleeping difficult. There's all these things. What are some of the physical things that happen when we are trapped in this sort of cycle?
Yeah, exactly. Good question. Well, we're all different. We all have different genetics.
Mm,
And most people are aware of where they've got sensitivities. I've personally got sensitivities in my digestive system.
yeah.
So, the body keeps the score. I know if I'm chronically or acutely stressed because, I'll get stomach pain and other symptoms. Some people get muscular pain,
Mm,
back problems. Other people find they're prone to panic attacks, depression. And, we see a lot of chronic illness, which has a psychosomatic
yeah.
element to it. Some people get eczema and asthma, and that can get worse when they're stressed. There's so many ways we can manifest. And, of course, basic ones like sleep and appetite and motivation are affected by imbalances in our neurochemicals.
I want to say for everyone who is sort of listening who might find themselves constantly, doom scrolling late at night. I know my husband says, there'll be a headline that'll come up about a missing toddler or something that's happened to a child. And I'll be like, oh my God. And he goes, why are you clicking on it? You're making yourself feel worse. Sometimes I can't stop myself from doing it. And this sort of
Yeah.
makes sense what you've been talking about, but I need to exercise a bit more self-control because I can find myself going down that rabbit hole and doom scroll and dwell on the negatives. So what are some practical things that we can do today to start rewiring our brain to focus on the positive rather than the negative?
Okay, excellent question. Well, what you said just now, Carla, relates to learning as well. Our
Hmm.
brains are learning machines, we're always learning. And it's seductive because we think if I learn lots about this story, about this family or this situation, maybe I can learn something and prevent it from happening to me. So there
Mm.
is some ancient neurocircuitry about wanting to learn and prevent, bad things from happening.
Rather than
Um,
being sort of drawn to macabre or drawn to
well,
like worst
well,
case.
Well, that's true. I mean, when the cortisol and adrenaline get spiked, dopamine gets spiked as well. And
Mm.
dopamine is that chemical. It does lots of things. One of the things it does is it motivates us to go out into the world and try to problem solve and get things done and take action. And so when the dopamine
Mm.
is high as well, that kind of keeps us locked into a cycle of wanting to learn, as if learning more about these bad things will somehow protect us. But if we're aware of this bias, we can remind ourselves that, as I've done, actually it was a line from a Claire Bowditch song, and the line from the song is, "I cannot watch the news. If I do, I cannot sleep for the pain and the stories of the people I'll never meet. That doesn't help them." And she sings it with such passion. I'm like, it doesn't
Mm.
help them, and
Mm.
it doesn't help me because I mean, I sometimes read stories about things that happen to people in my profession where they, get into a bad situation. I think, well, it's relevant. I can learn from that, but there's got to be a limit because a lot of the time, all of this learning about bad stories isn't going to help us.
Mm,
It doesn't actually. I mean, it's your line of work, so you need to stay informed. But
of
we've each
course.
got to decide where our limits should be. And is it? I mean, a simple question is it helping me or is it not helping me? And to regularly reflect on what it's doing. Is it bringing me peace or stress?
Yeah.
And do I want peace or do I want stress? Sometimes
Yeah.
stress helps us, right? But sometimes you're allowed to choose peace.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think just being aware of these biases, curating your social media news feed, being careful just the amount of time you spend. I'm sitting here right now looking at my big TV screen and I play 8, 6, and 8 hour YouTube scrolling videos of beautiful places on planet Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those images of beautiful places does something to my brain. Everything we put into our eyes and ears affects our brain and therefore our physiology. So I think just becoming very intentional about what you put in there
Or maybe just switch off.
and switch off.
Not
Switch
switch off
off.
to 4BC or afternoons, not that, but like just switch
Well,
off in general.
you guys do a great job of presenting, good news stories, stories of interest, but some websites and some media channels
Can
do
be a lot.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's knowing and picking. Well, we really appreciate your time every time you join us here on Afternoons. Why our brains love bad news. Dr. Rachel Hannam, it is intriguing stuff. And I think let's just focus on the positive. Let's focus on the half full today rather than the glass half empty.
Okay, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.